One of the quickest ways to improve your running form is just to do skipping. And of the skipping, happy hip hack skipping or chicken wing skipping.
Lawrence van Lingen is a renowned movement specialist and structural integration therapist.
Something that's pretty unique about me is I can change someone's body to run better.
He works with endurance athletes of all levels to help them move and run more efficiently.
We've seen like really powerful changes in blood lactate, like extraordinary. This is a performance enhancer. It's not subtle. It definitely measurably improves blood lactate, your relationship to running and efficiency. It's a bit like a boat on a plane, like the boat sort of goes and it's slow and there's a lot of resistance, and it gets to a certain speed and it gets up and then it's more efficient and it's faster. That's running.
His focus isn't on forcing technique or copying textbook form, but on restoring how the body moves naturally by improving posture, timing, and coordination from the center out.
There's a verbiage you'll hear like, oh, you got to have stiff ankles and you got to hit the ground and get off the ground, and it's all about ground contact time. It's not, you got to land, store elastic energy, and then time your jump to go with your elastic energy return.
His approach uses deceptively simple tools like backward walking, tire pulling, and the flow rope.
You swing the flow rope enough and your running starts to look very symmetrical and compact and economical.
These tools help athletes generate power through better movement rather than more effort. On top of that, they also help reduce tension and decompress the spine.
Most 40 to 50 year olds can decompress their spine by about an inch. And we've seen up to 2 inches, like people regain 2 inches of height.
Lawrence van Lingen came to prominence in elite triathlon through his work with Jan Frodeno, helping him return from injury and back to winning at 42 years old. Jan Frodeno is the first triathlete in history to win Olympic gold, the Ironman World Championship, and the Ironman 70.3 World Championship. Today, Lawrence works with some of the best athletes in the world, including 3-time Ironman 70.3 World Champion Taylor Knibb.
Watch someone running carefully or in slow motion, especially elites and especially if they're running quickly. You'll notice that their leg straightens.
In this episode, we explore how midlife runners can meaningfully improve how they run and become more efficient by addressing movement patterns, and whether the idea of perfect running form actually holds up as we age.
A lot of people just suffer through running. The amount that we sit and the amount that we stare at screens is affecting your movement patterns and your posture, and you probably need to antidote that. And the pathway through that is...
So if you want to unlock a running form that helps you run further and faster with less effort, this episode is absolutely for you. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Lawrence van Lingen on the Endurance Lab podcast. If someone has just clicked onto this video and is discovering you for the first time, could you describe for them what you actually do in the running and movement space, beyond just titles and credentials?
It's kind of difficult because I definitely don't work the way most people work. I initially trained as a chiropractor, and then I got more into sort of working with fascia and I suppose like body work. So something that's pretty unique about me is I can change someone's body to run better. I can help them have a body that runs better, which not a lot of people work in that space. So let's say I can, change the patterning of your tibia so that you have more ankle dorsiflexion so that you can use your Achilles as a spring more, or because I'm pretty good at, or because I move the needle a lot with body work, like let's say we can change your posture. We can organize your joints and give you a better joint structure, and a better body moves better. And most people, approach fascia from a point of view of sort of cupping it or scraping it, or you maybe foam roll and you hope that things work out. As a reason, working with a triathlete at the moment, and he had, his quads used to seize up. So he was like quad dominant, right? So a traditional approach for a lot of people would be to strengthen their quads. We just rotated his whole quads round so that they complemented running more, and then his quad dominance and sort of his legs seizing up disappeared. So that's a good example of I can work with body work and change people's body and posture that makes them more efficient and less injury prone. And I'm pretty effective in that space. And I think I can do that much more than people can imagine. You're probably not used to that. The level and the amount of change that we can do through body work. And then a lot of what I do is, because I can only treat a finite amount of people, is I'm trying to help people understand their bodies and running so that they can sort of change the pattern of their body to make it more congruent to running and moving well. And it's not just about running. I think it's really important that people age well. There's a paradigm where you sort of, people just think if you strengthen a muscle, you'll be fine. And I think it's a bit like a car. You need the wheel alignment, you need brakes, you need a good steering system, you need suspension, not just an engine. So I think from like, if you had to say to me, hey, Lawrence, which do you think is less likely to get injured, a strong athlete or a runner that can run skillfully? I'm going to go with a skillful runner. I think you can prevent more injuries from skill in using your body appropriately and working with your body than you can through, let's just say, strength and rehab alone. So that's what I do now, is that I primarily want to, because I think we've got really effective tools to help people change their patterns that they're not aware of. So I want to grow that space online, and treat less and help more people.
My audience are mostly midlife runners. Well, it's basically people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. A lot of them have come to running late in life, like myself. And we struggle with running form. So if someone is going to come to ask you, how do I run with perfect form? Do you actually believe that there's such a thing as perfect form, or a perfect form that everyone should aspire towards? Or is it such that every individual has their own perfect form that is unique to them that they can work towards?
Both. Okay, so you're quite correct. It's unique and individual, so that person needs to run the best that they can run for themselves. Or there's no such thing as perfection, there's just progress. You just want to head in the right direction. But I do think that most people's run form is so substandard that they're having not a great experience. And I think that plays out. Like Strava did a big study, and like 90% of people hate running, or think it's a painful thing, and it's always hard to exercise. Like this morning we were like, it's just too windy, we're not going to go for a run because it'd be unpleasant, right? So and even if it was a nice day, some days you're just like, it's hard to get out the door. I don't think that goes away, but I do think that your running itself should be a pretty pleasant experience once you get going. There is always that initial hardness, whereas a lot of people just suffer through running, and the pathway through that is skill and like understanding that it's almost there's a guy called Peter McKinnon, the balanced runner. Okay, his Instagram handle is balanced runner, and he's very much of the opinion that running is just a skill. And just like you go for golf lessons, tennis lessons, you have to go for running lessons, and you need to learn the skill of running. I agree with him, and he's fantastic, and he's really, really good at what he does.
Is that the Australian guy?
The Australian guy, yeah. The problem is that I think our world at the moment is just so oversold. So people are like, just increase your cadence, you'll be fine. So I think people are really free to give out advice in the running space. Teaching people how to move and trust their body is a big responsibility, and it comes from the best of intentions for sure. But I think it's not a lot of people have put deep thought into it. Not a lot of people have got a really good system, and a lot of it's like that. It's first order thinking. Like if you have a low cadence, tell the person to increase their cadence. Like nothing in life works that simply. Nothing. Why is the cadence low? Like you got to think a little bit deeper and provide sort of structure and powerful tools. And I think running for some reason is very superficial, very reactionary. I'm pretty passionate about this. I really want to help people run better. You do this advice and people just tell you like lean forward from the ankles and increase your turnover and you're going to be fine. And it's like, it's not the case. That is not going to help you. I think like the average person on like the user, like your runners are just, I'm sure identify with, there's so much noise. They've tried a lot of these things. They work for a little while and they stop working, and often it gets worse. And people, it's so sad that something so fundamental like running is injury prone. Running injury rates have not dropped in 40 years. And that runners are more injury prone than NFL pro football players. Something like half of all runners are sidelined with an injury at any given time.
We kind of learn to run with instinct in our formative years, right? And I think most of us are not taught how to run. On that note, for someone that wants to improve their form, what do you think is the smartest way to begin if they want to improve that? Quick pause here. If you're enjoying this conversation so far, I just want to give you a bit of context around what we're building with the Endurance Lab podcast. From January 2026, we'll be releasing 3 podcast episodes each month. The whole premise of this show is to bring thoughtful, evidence-based conversations around nutrition, training, performance, and recovery, with those discussions shaped through the lens of long-term health, and longevity for midlife runners and endurance athletes. So, if there are specific nuances within topics that you'd like me to explore more deeply or certain guests that you'd like me to have on the show, leave them in the comments. I genuinely read all those comments and I'll do my best to either reach out to the right experts or shape future episodes around your questions. Because ultimately, this podcast is about helping you understand the nuances so you can make better decisions in your own training and life. Alongside experts in endurance sports, from researchers and coaches to specialists in different areas of performance, we'll also be featuring masters athletes, people who've achieved meaningful performance breakthroughs later in life, to share their stories, the mistakes they've made, how their training has evolved with age, and the practical lessons they've learned along the way. So, if this kind of conversation resonates with you, consider subscribing and setting the notification bell to all so you'll be notified whenever a new episode goes live. Alright, let's get back to the conversation. For someone that wants to improve their form, what do you think is the smartest way to begin if they want to improve that?
You know, you've struck right to the core. Like, there's a paradox, right? So it's our birthright to run. We all run. Like, you go around to a kiddie's playground and every single 4 and 5-year-old can run. Mostly if they're healthy. Obviously, you know, some people aren't blessed enough to be able to run. I think a lot of it is our modern lifestyle has taken away from self-living, because a lot of running is through play and exploration. So I think if we didn't have schools and kindergarten and chairs and car seats, and we weren't sort of propped up in baby chairs prematurely for convenience for the mother to be fed. Okay, so like if we had a much more sort of feral upbringing where we rolled and crawled and really stressed our sort of neurodevelopmental system, I think people would move a lot better. And if we didn't sit as much, the average person or the vast majority of people, you need to understand that the amount that we sit and the amount that we stare at screens is affecting your movement patterns and your posture, and you probably need to antidote that. So just like you really do need to brush your teeth twice a day and floss. It's a really good idea. And brush your tongue. You know, I think people need to understand that you need to look after your posture and you need to have sort of daily mobility routines. And your sort of birthright to run might be way more flawed than you think. You know, like, I know it sounds crazy, but your hips can actually be like stuck in reverse and work the wrong way around, which is a very hard concept for people to understand. But if you stand and you gently engage, like if you clench your buttocks, your hips should push forward. And for most people, because we sit so much in flexion, if you engage your glutes, your hip will pull backwards. And then that's a massive distinction. And elite runners, their hip pushes forward, and they have a certain shape. So you have like a well-defined glute max, and the lower fibers of the glute max are well developed because that helps push you forward. Whereas a lot of people sort of almost pull themselves forward when they run, and their hips are almost stuck in reverse. So like, you know, I know it sounds crazy, but a lot of people are not, they're not using their hips as your hips were designed to be used.
So do you think that where they should start is to work on engaging the posterior chain muscles?
Yeah, I've got away from, so Jasmine, that's correct. And I've got videos saying anterior chain and posterior chain. I've got away from trying to describe that to people because just for clarity, you know. So for some people, it really helps if there's an anterior chain and a posterior chain. And one of the things we use with the flow rope is if you swing the rope backwards in a figure of 8, you sort of go, oh, that opens my posture up, and it can often change the timing and help you access the posterior chain. But I think like very, very specifically, because someone that's really smart and biomechanically educated is going to say, hang on a minute. I think what you want is a sense of hip extension based running. And if you have two words, if you look at things two different ways, so I know in the natural running space, some people will say your hamstring is a bicep, you just shorten it through your gait cycle and you pick your feet up. And I think there's an element of pose running in that, where you just pick your feet up off the ground, or you do butt kicks, or you shorten your hamstring. I think people need to realize that if you watch someone running carefully or in slow motion, especially elites, and especially if they're running quickly, you'll notice that their leg straightens. Okay, so as the knee goes past the hip, the leg actually straightens. So the hamstring is not shortening through the gait cycle. There's a point where it lengthens, and then it might shorten again. And so like in North America, at some of the colleges, they really do teach people to hit the ground backwards, to sweep backwards, to sort of have this notion of pulling yourself forward with your hamstrings. And there's a notion of front side mechanics and sprint running where you run that way. I think the only way to run healthily and sustainably is to travel forward and then straighten your leg. And you need that element of straightening the leg. And there is an element of hip hinging or pulling back for sure. But if your leg straightens in your gait cycle, generally speaking, you're probably going to be okay. But if your hamstring shortens right through the gait cycle, if you pull back and don't have that sense of straightening your leg, for me, you're going to be in trouble. Like I don't see an injury-free, enjoy running path forward. And not to say that, there's people that believe that they run like that. And there are people that train that way and run very, very, at a very, very high level that way. I just don't think it's sustainable. You need to straighten your leg as part of your gait cycle. And so a lot of the work that I do is to create the sense of competence or trust. Like if we do backward walking, it's to teach your body to trust that position and to have a sense of straight, your back leg straightens through the gait cycle, or hip extension based running. It would be a way of explaining it. And I think it's really, really important. I like the duality of things. I'd like to understand both sides of arguments. I've tried one way. I get it. I just don't see it. Like you pull back, and if that's the focus of your running and that's your priority, I think your running is a lot harder than it should be, and it's more injury prone than it should be.
Why are you moving away from explaining it in terms of the posterior chain and anterior chain? Because I've watched those videos of yours.
Yeah.
They resonated very well with me. The three things that you talk about, the flow rope, tire pulling, and walking backwards. Yeah. I've tried all. And I have to say that for me, it's completely changed the way I run. It's amazing. And that's why I want to speak to you, because pulling the tire really taught me how to engage my glutes. And the flow rope gave me a sense of rhythm when I run. It really cleans up everything. And now I feel my running is smooth. I wouldn't say it's effortless because you still have to run with effort, but there's this flow to the whole movement that is very rhythmic. I don't know. It just feels so much better. So if you can talk a bit about the flow rope and tire pulling so people can kind of understand how to use it and how to incorporate it so that they can experience a change in their running form.
I'm very glad that you had a positive experience, and that's my wish, is like people reframe their relationship with running and understand it at a deeper level. And that's exactly what we want. It should feel empowering, and you want a sense of rhythm, and that's what I'm supposed to be doing. It's those weird intangibles that are very hard to put your finger on that these tools can provide. The reason I'm just going to go back it up a bit. The reason I don't talk as much about anterior chain and posterior chain is just because of in the company that I'm with and the questions that I get asked. I need to be able to have a very rational, clear discussion of what it is that we want to do. And anterior chain and posterior chain is sort of like fascia. It's part of Thomas Myers. It's a little fringe. It's got a lot of value. It's just a way of explaining to someone what you've experienced. It's just trying to put in language is terrible. It's like really, it's an inadequate vehicle for explaining things, you know what I mean? But anyway, so flow rope's great. One of the things it does is, I think people, like we talk about hips stuck in reverse, people move from the outside in. Like let's say a cue for running, some people say fast hands, fast feet. If you move your hands and your feet fast, you'll kind of move from the outside in. The best way of explaining this is to, if you watch like a golfer that really doesn't know how to hit the golf ball, they'll use their hands a lot, and their body will be probably pretty still because they're really trying to hit that little white ball. Whereas if you watch a really good golfer, their hips move first and then their hands come through second. There's a delay, hips first. And so you're moving from the center out, and that's a force multiplier. So it's like cracking a whip. Like a small movement centrally creates an accelerated movement at the extremities. And I think because of contracting, let's say you go to the gym, you pick up a dumbbell, your biceps shortens, right? We're always moving the outside, and not a lot of our length sort of comes from the center or opens us up, or we don't push as much as we probably pull in life. And again, go back to, we sit an extraordinarily large amount, and just because it's topical, like people are like hurting themselves with standing desks. If it's okay to stand and sit, you should need to alternate the two. So you can't. I think there was this notion of sitting is the new smoking. I think being indoors is the new smoking. So try be out, it's okay to sit, it's okay to change and move your positions around. It's okay to stand and sit. Don't vilify sitting too much. But anyway, so the flow rope helps you move from the center out, which is important. And then you can use it to create this sort of sense of shape and timing. When you first use the flow rope, we encourage you to swing backwards in a figure of 8. And a lot of people run and say, oh my God, my shoulders are rolling backwards. Often that disappears. So like if you ask me, are my shoulders rolling backwards or forwards when I run, I can't tell you. But at one stage they went from rolling definitely forward to definitely swapping the other way around and rolling backwards. Whereas now I couldn't tell you which way my shoulders go. So that's also one of those things where if we talk about anterior chain and posterior chain, people like want to make their shoulders roll backwards. And, I'm not sure. I think it needs to be more elegant and more sort of, you want your shoulders to move and have rhythm when you run. I'm not sure if focusing on backwards rolling shoulders is the way forward. Although certainly you if you swing the flow rope, you might experience that quite strongly. I mean, I had a guy, talking to me on YouTube, and he was saying like, no, you don't understand. Like my shoulders are rolling backwards in an infinity pattern. And like he was explaining in great detail. And I said, yeah, and it's common and it happens all the time. He says, no one's ever experienced this. You don't know what I'm talking about. And I said, yeah, it's very, very common that you have this experience that my shoulders roll backwards, like you're doing backstroke while you're running. And he thought like he just, So after a while, that sensation disappears. So I think for flow rope, you can learn, we do head over foot is one of the things you learn with flow rope. So to get the timing of your head and your foot landing at the same time. As soon as you've got that in your running, you probably want to reframe that and you want to learn to step out of that pattern. So you want to step your head away from your foot rather than put your head onto your foot. And then something that I haven't taught much online, so your listeners can get a sneak preview, right? Or premium content that's not out there is try swing the flow rope backwards and use it as a jump rope. So skip, like with a skipping rope or jump rope. Swing the flow rope backwards. You only have to hold it in one hand, like on one side or the other side. You don't have to try and get your legs through, but swing it backwards and then jump. As the rope comes up, jump. And it really, really gives you a sense of lift in your running. I think it's very important that people realize that 70 to 80% of running forces are vertical. Okay, so the vast majority of your running is vertical, and that's again, when people are trying to pull themselves forward, you're misplacing your energy. You need to get up in the air. You need to get airborne. It's a bit like a boat on a plane. Like the boat sort of goes and slow, and there's a lot of resistance, and it gets to a certain speed, and it gets up, and then it's more efficient and it's faster. That's running. You need to get vertical. You need to get up in the air to increase your stride length. And swinging a jump rope backwards, a flow rope or jump rope backwards, and jumping up with the rope is much better than coming down, which is like if you jump rope the other way around, you accentuating coming down onto the ground. If you swing the rope backwards, you accentuate getting up off the ground. So that's a great way. And it's like if you're very injury prone, you've got foot injuries and bone stress injuries and shin splints, you can use jump rope as an introduction to plyometrics and increasing your foot sort of strength. It's much safer to jump backwards. You'll find you land soft and you step up, so whereas if you swing the jump rope the other way down, you end up hitting the ground pretty hard.
So would you swing it backwards? So instead of, if you're going forward, you'll be chopping.
Yeah.
Like in a chopping motion, right?
Yeah,
so you're talking about going backwards. So you're going upwards.
Yeah.
And as you push off.
But just swing it on one side. So you're going to use the rope and just swing it in a backward loop on the one side, and then start jumping so that you time your up jump with the rope going up. So you're not doing figure of eight. Just using it as
okay.
Like boxers use. They go like skip.
Yeah.
Oh, down. Okay. You flip the rope around and you swing backwards. So if you were swinging the rope, it would hit a pebble forwards. Okay. So like a soft, like underhand throw basically. And you'll find that you land softly and you step strong, which is one of the cues we use. So you want to land softly and you want to step off the ground strong. And so the jumping up teaches you to load your elastic tissue and then time the up jump which is running. You land, you store elastic energy in your body, and then you need to, with the release of that elastic energy, jump up.
So when the rope comes down, and when it hits the ground, you kind of jump up at the same time with it.
As the rope comes up in front of you, you'll see you can't mess it up, especially if the rope's heavy enough. You just follow the rope. The rope will lift you. So the heavier the rope you use, the easier it is. Like a light skipping rope, you might like, oh, I don't really feel it. But if you swing a towel, let's say, or something like that's got some weight, or a thicker rope, you'll find, oh, I just go with the rope. The rope's pulling.
Okay, so you just follow the flow and you jump with the rope.
Follow the rope.
Got
it really helps you with the sensation. Oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing with running. Land softly, step strong. Land, jump. Land, jump. Whereas a lot of people are like, I don't know, there's a verbiage you'll hear like, oh, you got to have stiff ankles and you got to hit the ground and get off the ground, and it's all about ground contact time. It's not. You got to land, store elastic energy, and then time your jump to go with your elastic energy return, which is very different framing in your brain. That timing.
Okay.
Yeah. So try it out and let me know how it goes, because it's amazing.
I will. For the rope itself.
First on Justman's podcast.
What thickness of rope do you recommend people start with?
If anyone knows of a good natural rope, because I'd love to use natural fibers and not polyester fibers or nylon but the problem with the natural fiber ropes, they're too light. Okay. And so you need a bit of density and weight. So what we found is like a double braid marine rope, and you get either nylon or polyester. Polyester is a bit rougher and harder to bend, and the knots won't be as tight, and nylon's soft on your hands and you can make sort of more elegant knots. So that's probably the best rope to use, is double braid marine nylon rope. Okay. And that gives you, they've got a dense core, so that the rope's kind of got some oomph to it, right? And then I think the best sort of starting point for most people is about 15 to 16 millimeters thick, which is 5/8 of an inch. It's heavier than a lot of traditional flow ropes, but I think the thing with flow rope is swing it slowly so you can feel it, and you tend to get a more sort of sense of big muscles moving, fascia and timing. When the rope's small, like if let's say you used a skipping rope or a jump rope, you'll find you can be very handsy. So the rope goes, because it's got less air resistance, it goes through the air very, very quickly. And then you lose that sort of sense of central swinging. You will really want to feel like you're swinging the rope from your hips, or there's a sense of central swinging pattern. People that swing the rope and sort of do like really wake up their spinal engine and really get that sense of center out swinging will often decompress their spine. So you talk about your listener or your following, okay, are pretty much 40 to 50 year olds. Most 40 to 50 year olds can decompress their spine by about an inch. Okay. And we've seen up to 2 inches, like people regain 2 inches of height. One of my best friends was 5'10", he's now 6 foot. And that's measured, like they went for a bike fitting and they measured him, they got him down. So you can decompress your spine a lot with flow rope, which I don't think is discussed or put out there very much. If you sort of Google the flow rope community, they'll tell you, but the sense of fascia connection and space in your joints and decompressing your spine is sort of like one of the very healthy side effects of swinging your flow rope. So after a while, so I'm interrupting you.
No, not at all. Go ahead.
So one of the things, we talk about like this posture and moving well is, I know like the athletes that I work with are starting to move well when they stop using foam rollers. Like their whole narrative, like they don't stretch as much. They will stretch like a little bit, but their life starts becoming reactive and becomes proactive. And it's like a lot of them, feel like I don't have trigger points. I don't need to use my foam roller. They understand like where mobility really comes from. So they're mobile, they're supple, they start to have a confidence in their body. And flow roping is one of the tools that can give you really sort of healthy fascia that doesn't really have knots or trigger points, But it's operator dependent. Everyone has unfortunately, there's a Gaussian curve. And so you get outlier responders and you get outlier non-responders. And then there's what happens for the rest of us. So, individual experiences may vary.
Yeah. So, when I started using the flow rope, I did the backwards, as in I walked backwards and I swung it in an outward motion.
Yeah.
And then I walked forward and swung it in a chopping motion.
Yeah.
Initially, I couldn't figure out, should I be rotating when I run in the forward chopping motion with my shoulders, or should I be rotating backwards? After a while, it became intuitive, and I kind of figured it out. But if someone is going to go out and get a flow rope and they're going to try, should they try to mimic the pattern of the forward chop when they're running, or the backward shoulder rotation?
Yeah, that's what we were kind of talking about earlier, is like eventually it'll become one thing in your mind. So one of the hardest things with working with me that I'll tell like an athlete is, don't think when you run. Okay. So we do these things at home and then you notice what shows up. Don't try and make things happen. And I can tell you on my community, the number one frustration point is people try and have a belly button towards their lead leg, or they try and make things happen. Like, I'll describe the healthy things that typically show up in your running, and then you say, oh, I need to make that happen, because people are so conditioned to being told and instructed how to run. Whereas a lot of what we're doing is setting up a body that, like when you decompress your nervous system, when you start to figure out your joint patterns, people start running in a certain pattern. And I can describe to you what those healthy signs, it would almost be like, I don't know, like in finance, I can tell you what a financially successful person's household looks like, like the garden is neat, the windows are not broken, the house looks good, you have 2 cars in the garage, like there's signs, right? It doesn't mean to say a poor person can go and buy an expensive house and 2 cars and then suddenly they're financially stable. It doesn't work that way. So a lot of the things that I explain, you should notice, like, oh wow, my shoulders are rolling backwards when I run, and then after a while it disappears, and you're not sure if it's forward or back. I'm enjoying as well, so like I'm constantly trying to refine and become more efficient. At the moment, like really having a sense of lifting your shoulder as you step off the ground, like with that up. So lifting your shoulder, or we call this like if my arm was a chicken wing, lifting a chicken wing when you run really helps get you your shoulders off your hips and frees up your hips to express themselves. I think a lot of people, their shoulders are so tight on their body, and that sort of suppresses hip movement. So I think your runners will greatly benefit. We do Happy Hip Hack, which gets your shoulder off your hip. And I've done a little video on skipping. And skipping is like, to one of the, you kind of did ask me and I didn't answer you. One of the quickest ways to improve your running form is just to do skipping. And of the skipping, Happy Hip Hack skipping or chicken wing skipping would be probably the quickest way to figure it out. Something that I've changed in my verbiage now is length on one side creates healthy rotation, rather than try get your belly button to go towards your lead leg. People just try and rotate too hard, and it doesn't mean your hips are functioning properly. You need to step in a way that your belly button goes towards your lead leg, and to do that you need length on one side. So shoulder away from hip creates a healthy rotation pattern, whereas trying to make the rotation pattern doesn't mean you figured out shoulder away from hip. So length on one side creates healthy rotation is a very, very good thing to think about. And creating that shoulder away from hip in your running is, and like I say with the flow rope, as you step, you want to step out of that pattern, not into that pattern. And I think to your point, like when you're running, we talk about anterior and posterior chain, it's probably much more helpful to think of, I want up. I want to, when you swing that rope backwards, you have a sense of land, get vertical rather than coming down on the ground, would be a really good way of reframing things. And it's not quite anterior chain, posterior chain. It makes sense saying anterior chain, posterior chain, but makes more sense to say, I step strong, I extend my leg to get up into the air,
So is it kind of fair to say that moving forward and backwards is just to teach you the pattern of moving from your spine or from your center out, and you would just run without thinking about which way to go, just intuitively.
Yes.
Like following the flow, the rhythm of the rope, in a sense. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's like a leap of faith, because you do the work and you've got to trust that the work shows up in your running. And it's not as easy, it's difficult for people to do that because you're like, just tell me what to do. And a lot of people are herky-jerky. They disorganize when they're running. They have balance problems and they have timing problems, and it's not just strength, and so the flow rope really, really helps create structure and organization and smooths your running out. You swing the flow rope enough and your running starts to look very, very symmetrical and compact and economical.
I can feel that since
start disappearing. You just look and that X factor. I butt up the frustration points of you can't say that, and evidence-based medicine says, and I don't believe that. So there is that, but like. A chef will taste a meal and tell you that's not good enough, right? You can look at someone's running, you can say that's amazing or that's not amazing. And it's very, very hard to quantify what it is that makes one person's running good and the other person's running not good, right? And flow rope definitely starts moving you towards the good. You swing the flow rope and you figure out those rhythm and the timing, get the fluidity. It's a lot of it's got to do with rib cage and sternum mobility and thoracic mobility, and you can really decompress your spine and learn to move from the center out. People are going to look at your running and say that has something. I'm buying whatever you're selling. This is something I buy into, which is very intangible, but great to have. And you, as the person that sort of swings the flow rope, again, all the things you describe, it starts to become. Oh, I have a sense of flow or rhythm or timing and space. I think a lot of people time starts to slow for them. So they feel like I have more than enough time when I run. Whereas a lot of people's experience of running is rushed. So like if I say to you, increase your cadence, you're not taking enough steps. One is I've judged you. Okay. And then I've given you a very superficial way to improve your running. I just increase the amount of steps that you take. And most people increase the amount of steps they take by picking their feet up off the ground. So it's flexion, which is the sitting position. And we're talking about extension, getting up off the ground, not picking your feet off the ground, which kind of pulls you down. If you keep picking your feet up off the ground rapidly, you'll just go down. Okay. You need to get up. So, so flow rope adds that, and you don't need to do a lot of it. And it moves the needle significantly for a lot of people in the beginning, and then it plateaus. So I don't really notice a change.
Once you get it.
Once you get it, yeah.
And
once you get it,
I don't use it so much anymore.
I only swing the flow rope twice a week, and I use a heavy flow rope most of the time. Now I'll start using, because I'm going to do like a plyometric prep class. I'll use the flow rope. I think is really, really good for people that want to introduce bone strengthening and tendon strengthening, and prepping for plyometrics, swinging it backwards, to create that sense of jumping, lifting, staying in the air, hanging in the air, and landing softly, stepping strong.
Could you talk quickly a bit about backward walking and tire pulling? How does that help running? And, what is tire pulling? How would you describe it?
Tire pulling is resisted walking. The reason, and I'm going to add one more thing again, Jasmine, you're getting all the good stuff, right? I'm really excited about rucking, which is carrying a pack. Okay, so if you walk, you don't really use your glutes. Okay, so a lot of the times, what we're trying to do is break down simple movement patterns and make you so confident in them that they show up magically in your running, right? So resisted walking is exactly that. We can teach you to walk forwards in a certain pattern with a lot of healthy mechanics. But you might not, because you don't really use your glutes to walk, you might not get that sense of extension that we want. And if you drag a tire or anything with resistance behind you when you walk, you tend to fire up your glutes. So we can have someone walking forward with the correct pattern, and if you add a little bit of resistance, that resistance will almost pull them out of pattern because they're not strong enough to overcome that sort of initial resistance point. And then I'm sure, as you've experienced, you start walking the tire, it's pretty crazy. It becomes your best friend. Like if I've traveled, the first thing I want to do when I get back home is walk the tire, because it really opens up your hips. It's great antidote to sitting on a chair. Like we love our tire, like we get crazy comments and people talk about it, and but it really, really gives you functioning hips, and you start to go, oh, I like that. I mean, my wife is untrainable, right? She's an Olympic runner, but no one's ever managed to correct her form. She's very, very resistant to change, to different techniques. A lot of what she thinks me is just total nonsense. And, she's just a natural. She ran barefoot until she was 23. She's got great running form and mechanics. She self-selected that tire and loves that tire because it makes such big things, you know what I mean? Whereas she's not interested in anything else that I do. So that's tire walking, and it really helps if you walk up a gradient, because again, you can step. So a lot of people that don't want to walk a tire outside will tell them put the treadmill at about 6% gradient, and then just sort of anchor yourself to weights on the floor with ferro cords, and you can sort of jerry rig a home tire, one that you can use on a treadmill in winter in Finland, I would imagine.
Yeah, you look like an idiot walking around with a tire outside.
Yeah, we look like idiots when we walk around the tire.
Yeah.
Taylor just stomps the tire around the whole block, like the whole apartment complex that she lives in knows that she walks the tire. And then backward walking is reverse engineering walking. So by backward walking, you can bend your toes. So a lot of people when they walk don't push off their toes, they don't roll off their toes. So I use backward walking the most when I'm working with an elite athlete, okay? And it's the first thing we do, and it's the only thing they do for about 10 days. And the reason is because we don't want to get them injured, and it makes such a powerful but subtle shift in their running in a safe way that it's extraordinary. So basically what it'll do is it starts to delay when your foot lifts off the ground. So you stay on the ground longer. It basically pulls your foot more underneath your hips. In your mind, it might feel like your foot lands underneath your hip, okay? But it doesn't. It's going to land slightly in front of your hip, and it should, because you need to land, travel forward, store elastic energy, and then release. So if you had a lot of people say your foot must land underneath your hip, but technically, no, it should land slightly in front of your hip, but very close to your hip. So most people overstride, or their foot goes out too much in front. Backward walking sort of pulls that foot more towards underneath your hip and helps you travel over that connected leg better. And then it helps you roll off your toes, so you bend your toes. So it develops, toe bending will basically develop your arch strength of your feet, the lateral and the medial arch, which is great. And it also creates a sense of ease in your hips so that the big muscles can work. I think a way of describing it is a lot of people have strong, small muscles in their hip with tension, but not relaxed small muscles with big muscles that really do the work. You want your glute max is the biggest muscle in your body. You really should be using it to run. Whereas a lot of people almost use your hip rotators because you've strengthened them so much through single leg work or band walks or clams that they almost move you more than your glute max does. Walking backwards helps you relax your hips so that you can find the big muscles. Big muscles, because they're big, you almost have to be like, it's like swimming. To find your lats in swimming, you have to have a relaxed shoulder. To find your glute max when you're running, you almost have to have relaxed hips, not tight hips. So backward walking is fun. People start smiling. They have a sense of play. There's neuroplasticity. You bend your toes, you develop your arch, you relax your hips, you find your glute max, you change the timing of your running, and you increase your balance and proprioception and peripheral awareness. And there's a lot that happens. But it's a very, very safe way of, with athletes, like elite athletes, getting them to load their Achilles in a deeper, healthier way. So you use your Achilles and calf complex more as a spring. Because otherwise, let's say you worked on a runner, and this is for everyone. It's probably the safest segue into changing your running form. Your running form, it can change so profoundly that you're loading tissues in a different way, and new stress on the body, it can lead to sort of I wouldn't say an injury, or it could lead to an injury, but it could lead to sort of discomfort, or you're not adapted to it. So backward walking is a great safe segue into changing your running, and it's a very powerful way of reframing your running.
How far back do you recommend someone have the tire?
About 6 to 8 feet, so body length behind. Because you don't want it pulling down too much. You want it slightly more horizontal.
If someone, well, we're all limited on time, right? Because of family commitments and all the good stuff. If there's only one movement quality to unlock the most improvements in their running, what should someone focus on?
That's the thing. These are all tools, and it can be overwhelming. And I worked with, she was a triathlete, one of the greatest of all time triathletes. But after she retired, she couldn't run for 10 years. She could only run once a week or once every 10 days. And in 2 movement lessons, the one time I helped her with the movement pattern. And then the second time she came back just to make sure that she had it right. She can now run as much as she wants. So she can run 3.5 hour long runs. She can run 5-6 days a week. So it's a skill. There's so many tools, they're just tools. And if the one doesn't work for you, just put it down, use another tool, okay? The most important thing is you have that sense of stepping. And I think the easiest way to get it into your running is chicken wing skipping or happy hip hacking. Those will go like, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So if you can focus on shoulder away from hip, length on one side, the whole one side gets longer and you're stepping out of the ground to make that happen. And your force that you generate to run forward should be length on one side, a length on the other side. If you can just figure that out, you're going to be fine.
Do you have that video on your channel already?
Yeah.
The chicken. Okay.
Yeah,
I'll definitely link your channel down below in the description.
If not, I'll put it up today. I've got the videos.
Okay. Because you've got all the resources on, how to tie a flow rope, all the videos of you walking backwards.
Yeah.
All the good stuff is all on your channel. So a lot of awesome resource for people to check out. One last question. As a movement specialist, what does endurance mean to you?
Outlasting, I would say. I came upon this in the army. I was in the military, right? And we went through basic training. And at some point in basic training, I realized that I endured longer than others. So I was the last man standing. And I had this sort of notion of just keeping on and just being persistent and patient. Like good things come to those that are wait and that endure. And I think life can be really, really hard sometimes. And I think that too shall pass. And I think, there's some endearing quality to enduring and just lasting. I think you need to be kind to yourself. I think a lot of people, there's like an aggressive notion in running and pain and suffering and people running away from problems. I really do feel like running can be because it's something of consequence. It's cheap, it's easy, it's running. My brother was a surfer and really loved surfing, and it turns out like running was his best friend because he could run anywhere in the world. It is just such a key part of. Oh, and I'm going to add. So humans, we were born to run. That's the book, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps we're also born to carry. Okay, so we humans are the only mammals basically that carry things. I mean, we can load a pack horse or load a camel up, but we're the only people that carry. And we're talking about resisted walking with a tire, rucking. So putting a pack that's balanced front and back is very, very good, I think, for humans. For the
front and back.
Yeah, so you want a balanced pack. You don't want a backpack that's sort of pulling you forward. You want the weight distribution to be centered between front and back. For people that are interested, like let's say you've got people that are injured, they can't run, or you can only run a little bit, or you don't like running, resisted walking with a tire is a good idea, but rucking is a very, very good idea. I think humans were born to carry as well. And that axial loading of your spine and then walking underneath a balanced pack is a great way of amplifying walking. We kind of think we need to walk 4 times 90 minutes a week for health reasons. And I mean, they're modifying these guidelines all the time. But so a lot of people, that's a lot, or they don't exercise enough, they don't get out enough. Walking with a pack, really, really good idea. And especially in winter, because those packs get kind of warm. So they keep you warm. You don't look like a crazy person, but walking for bone strength and hip strength, and especially if you can walk with length on one side with a pack, so your shoulders kind of pushing into the pack, shoulders pushing into the pack, it really connects your core. I'm becoming a big believer, and I think there's a massive role to play for loaded walking or resisted or walking with a pack. They call it racking, which is a bit aggressive.
I used to be exactly what you described just now. I would lift my legs to run, as in, everything happens in front of my body.
Yeah.
And now it's happening behind my body. When I learn to drive from my spine, from my center out, it becomes so much more efficient as well.
We've seen like really, really powerful changes in blood lactate, like extraordinary. This is guess, don't guess. And I've got a guy who does, his company's called Shoe Sense. So he's got metrics that measure your efficiency. And I mean, he's an elite runner. I mean, his running efficiency changed absolutely dramatically. I mean, this is a performance enhancer. It's not subtle. It definitely measurably improves blood lactate, your relationship to running and efficiency.
I can attest to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Where can people find you if they want? Do you work with people online, or do you only work with elite athletes?
So my website's lawrencevanlingen.com, and so is my Instagram handle, and so is my YouTube channel, just my name. I have an online community where I work with people. I will work with cases that really interest me online, remote, one-on-one, but it's not really worth people's time to reach out to work with me one-on-one. It needs to be through the community. And I really do feel that I put so many resources out there. You don't really need to work with me. You just need to, like you did, just do the things. You'll be fine. And then it's fun, and it's a sense of exploration. Like a lot of times working one-on-one with me, I'm just going to tell you to do, I'll just post the videos and do these videos.
Yeah.
So
you've got all that resource on your channel anyway, so I'm going to link that for sure.
I'm not sure when your podcast comes out in the beginning of January. We will do a 12-week revamp your running cohort, where we'll have people taken through 12 weeks to totally transform your running. There's a lot of stuff going online, lawrencevanlingen.com.
If there were topics in this conversation that you'd like me to go deeper into with this guest, leave them in the comments. If there's enough interest, I'll invite the guest back onto the show and dedicate an episode to a deeper follow-up conversation. Thanks for watching all the way through, and I'll see you in the next episode.